Nicola Sturgeon quits as Scotland's First Minister.
There is a much greater intensity, dare I say it, brutality to life as a politician than in years gone by. I'm not expecting violins here, but I am a human being as well as a politician.
After 8 years as First Minister, she spoke of the relentless pressures of the job, but that it was the privilege of her life. What does Nicola Sturgeon's shock announcement mean for the SNP in Scotland and for the Scottish independence movement? She leaves office without realising her mission: independence for the Scottish nation. Also this lunchtime, police say missing mum Nicola Bully was high risk and vulnerable, but rule out third-party involvement in her disappearance. Inflation eases slightly, but the cost of food remains stubbornly high. And
we've got a surgery that's needing you.
A video appeal from the residents of one Cornish town for a real-life Doc Martin to replace their GP, who's retiring.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. Nicola Sturgeon has today sensationally quit as Scotland's First Minister. In the job for 8 years, she made an unexpected announcement this morning in which she spoke of the intense and relentless pressures of being at the top and of the toll that had taken, claiming she'd been wrestling with the decision to step down for weeks. She said serving as First Minister had been the privilege of her life. Well, the announcement follows the Scottish Government's recent and controversial gender reforms, which received cross-party backing in the Scottish Parliament but were blocked by Westminster. With the very latest, here's our correspondent Geraint Vincent.
Down the stairs at Boot House came one of the UK's most successful politicians this morning. Scotland's First Minister walked up to the podium in the middle of a quiet half-term week.
Good morning.
To deliver a shock announcement.
Since my very first moments in the job, I have believed that part of serving well would be to know, almost instinctively, when the time is right to make way for someone else. And when that time came, to have the courage to do so, even if to many across the country and in my party, it might feel too soon. In my head and in my heart, I know that time is now, that it is right for me, for my party and for the country. And so today I am announcing my intention to step down as First Minister and leader of my party.
And very quickly in this resignation speech, something very unusual from a leader who's devoted so much of her life to public policy.
And be in no doubt, this is really hard for me.
A glimpse of the personal toll it has taken.
Now, to be clear, I'm not expecting violins here, but I am a human being as well as a politician. A First Minister is never off duty, particularly in this day and age. There is virtually no privacy. Even ordinary stuff that most people take for granted, like going for a coffee with friends or for a walk on your own, becomes very difficult.
There have been setbacks in recent months, bitter rows in her party and her parliament, and then a clash with Westminster over a gender reform bill. But they were not, she insisted, the reason for her departure. Her decision, apparently the result of some self-assessment and hard-headed political calculation.
But I am firmly of the view that there is now majority support for independence in Scotland. But that support needs to be solidified, and it needs to grow further if our independent Scotland is to have the best possible foundation. To achieve that, we must reach across the divide in Scottish politics. And my judgment now is that a new leader will be better able to do this. Someone about whom the mind of almost everyone in the country is not already made up, for better or worse. Someone who is not subject to quite the same polarised opinions, fair or unfair, as I now am.
At the end, from a woman who put the most divisive of issues at the centre of her political life, an emotional tribute to her beloved Scotland.
The people of this beautiful, talented, diverse, at times disputatious, but always wonderful country. We faced the toughest of times together.
The last message was one of unity.
To all of the people of Scotland, whether you voted for me or not, please know that being your First Minister has been the privilege of my life. Nothing, absolutely nothing I do in future will ever come anywhere close. Thank you from the very bottom of my heart.
And so a political giant exits the stage and an era ends. But Nicola Sturgeon leaves the great cause of Scottish independence, now with no obvious leader and no clear guide as to what step it takes next. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Let's go live now to our Scotland reporter, Louise Scott, who is in Edinburgh. And Louise, a shock announcement today. Why today?
I think that's a question many of us are still pondering over. Certainly come as a shock. We only heard about the press conference happening at 9:30 this morning, and it comes a matter of weeks after the First Minister said she had plenty left in the tank to continue in this role. So it feels like a rapid change of circumstances. She was quite honest in her statement inside Bute House earlier, saying she knew instinctively that now is the right time to go, saying it's a relentless job and she can no longer give every ounce of herself to it. Others, however, will say that they maybe saw this coming. The First Minister has faced mounting pressure in recent weeks over various issues, particularly that self-ID gender bill. And we've also heard rumours of divisions within the party over some of those issues. Well, the Prime Minister has tweeted saying thanks to Nicola Sturgeon for her long-standing service, wishing her all the best for her next steps, and saying their party will continue to work with the Scottish Government moving forward. And all of this comes just weeks away from a party conference where the path ahead for another independence referendum for Scotland was due to be decided. Now, Nicola Sturgeon said she still believes her party will succeed on that front. But this is a huge blow for the independence movement. If Nicola Sturgeon cannot deliver that, who can?
All right, Louise in Edinburgh, thank you. Nicola Sturgeon's place in history has already been secured. She became Scotland's first female First Minister and the first woman to lead any devolved UK nation. She has been a member of the SNP since she was 16 and was a solicitor for 2 years before fully entering politics. Her rise to the top of Scottish politics came when Alex Salmond, her then mentor, stepped down following defeat in the 2014 independence referendum. In her time, she led the SNP to repeated election victories at all levels. Her party won a landslide at the 2015 general election. She also guided Scotland through the COVID pandemic, hosting daily briefings through the most unprecedented time in modern history. But the challenges have been just as notable. Her promise to close the attainment gap between better-off students and those from deprived backgrounds remains unfulfilled. Scotland holds the notorious title of having the highest drug deaths of anywhere in Europe. In the last few weeks, she has been under immense pressure due to her divisive stance on transgender rights. Just a few weeks ago, her government decided to pause all transfers to women's prisons of transgender prisoners.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context, there is no automatic right for a trans woman.
So there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman?
No, there is circumstances in which a trans woman will be housed in the male prison estate.
Well, she leaves office as the longest-serving First Minister, but without realising the prize she was really after, independence for Scotland. Well, let's go to our political correspondent, Harry Horton, who is at Westminster for this lunchtime. And Harry, that is a question. Where does this leave the independence movement then?
Yeah, well, I think the independence movement is at a bit of a crossroads at the moment. It suffered a setback last year when the UK Supreme Court ruled against the SNP's plans for a second independence referendum. And if you look at polls for support of Scottish independence at the moment, I think at best you would say they're stagnating, flatlining. At worst, you would say that support for independence is falling. And Nicola Sturgeon herself this morning acknowledged that she had perhaps become a divisive figure and it might be better for someone else to take over from her and take the independence movement to the next phase. Now, the news today, I think, also poses questions for the other parties here in Westminster. The Labour Party has just one MP in Scotland. They will be hoping that with a new SNP leader, Labour perhaps might do better at future UK elections. It's unclear how this will affect the Conservative Party and Liberal Democrats, who each have a handful of MPs in Scotland. It's worth noting, though, just how successful Nicola Sturgeon has been as a figure, not just in Scottish politics, but in UK politics. In her 8 years as First Minister, she's seen 5 UK Prime Ministers serve alongside her. Now, it's not clear who her successor will be at this stage, but whoever it is, they will inherit a huge task in terms of where they lead this independence movement now.
All right, Harry in Westminster, thank you. Moving on to the day's other main story, and Lancashire police say there is still no evidence of criminal activity as the search for missing Nicola Bully enters its 19th day. Detectives have said they don't think anyone else was involved in the mum of two's disappearance while walking her dog more than 2 weeks ago. Andrew Fletcher is at Lancashire Police headquarters, and Andrew, police seem no closer to solving this baffling case.
No, they don't, Lucrezia, and the reason I think why they called this news conference this lunchtime was not just to update the public on the investigation, but also to answer some of the speculation, what they called myths about Nicola's disappearance. And they acknowledge that there has been some criticism of the way that detectives have carried out their investigation. We heard from the officer leading the investigation, Detective Superintendent Becky Smith. She said it's still the police's hypothesis that Nicola went into the river. She said there's not a single piece of evidence for either of the other two possibilities, either that there was third-party involvement or that she left the area voluntarily. She stressed, though, that it's always been a working hypothesis, that the police remain open-minded and that they continue to review lots of new evidence day by day. We also heard details about that investigation and the scale of the work that's going on to try and find Nicola. Assistant Chief Constable Peter Lawson said that 40 detectives were working on the case and that they've been through a huge amount of information.
We visited more than 300 premises, spoken to almost 300 people and received around about 1,500 pieces of information into the inquiry. In terms of the physical searches, both water-based and on land, and in police assets, that's included the Northwest Underwater Search Unit, police drones, horses, dogs and the police helicopter.
Well, of course, this case has attracted a lot of media interest and social media interest, and Detective Superintendent Smith criticised what she called social media detectives. She said that their speculation had been harmful to the family, and she said that in 29 years of police service, she'd never seen anything like it. The family, of course, are the focus of the police's efforts, and they were asked about vulnerabilities that the family had reported to the police, Nicola's vulnerabilities, which had partly led to the case being classed as high risk right from the start. But they wouldn't give any details of those, they said, to protect Nicola's family's privacy. They just said they want to get answers for her family, for her two daughters, and the search continues.
All right, Andrew, thank you. 2 school children charged with the murder of 16-year-old Brianna Jai have been remanded into custody. The pair, a boy and a girl, both aged 15, appeared at Chester Magistrates Court today to confirm their names and addresses. Brianna was found dead on Saturday in a park near Warrington, having suffered multiple stab wounds. Next, latest figures show that inflation has eased slightly for a third month in a row, down a percentage point from its peak in October to 10.1%. It's largely because of falling fuel prices, but households are yet to feel the pressure lift as the cost of food continues to rise. I'm joined by our correspondent Neil Connery. And Neil, inflation still stubbornly high.
Certainly is. I mean, we hear this headline figure and it's certainly welcome to see inflation falling. But at the risk of stating the obvious here, that doesn't mean that prices are going down, of course. It just means that prices are rising more slowly. Now, as we know, the impact of energy bills mean that many people are still really battling to get through this winter. On top of that, food prices in these latest figures have risen to 16.7% in the year to January. There just is no quick fix to any of this. The Office for National Statistics says that costs were rising more slowly, but warns that business prices remain high overall, particularly for food. As we know, interest rates have gone up to 4% to try and tackle inflation, but the year ahead remains challenging. The Bank of England forecasts that inflation will fall to around 4% by December. That would still be double the target remit that the bank has, but it would clearly be a significant improvement. If economists are right on all of this, there is hope at least on the horizon, but it is still a long way off.
All right, Neil, thank you. More than 40,000 people have now died in the catastrophic earthquakes which struck Syria and Turkey over a week ago. Survivors are still being found, having spent more than 200 hours under the rubble. While attempts to find more continue, the focus is now shifting to providing support for them. Danny Sinner reports.
Moments like these are now rare. Rescuers come across a 77-year-old woman who is still alive, unlike many of her neighbours who were buried. Her apartment block in southeast Turkey was crushed 10 days ago. But rescuers know positive outcomes like this are unlikely now. These aerial pictures in Hatay show the true scale of the devastation. Big gaps where tower blocks once stood. The damage here is on a grand scale. Thousands have lost their homes. Questions now, though, as to why some high-rise buildings withstood Mother Nature's heavy hand, but some didn't. In Syria, too, neighbourhoods have become unrecognisable. Ibrahim knows he's one of the lucky ones, despite losing everything he owns. He tries to recover anything he can. He says, "We desperately need tents. We can stand the cold, no problem. But these women, children and injured from under the rubble, their whole body is blue." This sports hall has become a sanctuary for so many families. Children are now forced to pass the time here rather than school. They no longer exist. With no roof over their head, this family has decided to live in a truck. Others are surviving in tents. Abdul Majid is one of them. He says, "We want our voice to reach the whole world, but where is the aid? There are hundreds of people who still need tents. Aid is never going to come here." But with more border crossings like this one being opened up between Syria and Turkey, the hope is aid will get through to the people who need it the most. Many here know what desperation looks like and dread what the future holds. Danny Sinha, ITV News.
Well, here, union leaders say further teacher strikes in England are inevitable after the Education Secretary failed to make a pay offer in the latest talks. They met at the Department for Education today to try to reach a deal. The General Secretary of the Association of School and College Leaders said unless there is tangible progress, strikes by NEU members will be the only option. And the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, will not be standing as a Labour candidate at the next general election. He was suspended from the party and sits as an independent MP over his response to a scathing report into anti-Semitism. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the party is changing and will not go back. Finally, the shortage of GPs has made getting an appointment a nightmare for many, but the residents of one Cornish town have taken a pretty unusual step in their search for a new GP. They've released a song and a video ditching the traditional job advert. They've gone on record to explain what their town needs and, importantly, what it has to offer. Here's Sharon Thomas.
We've got a surgery that's needing you. We've got money if you want brass.
As a doctor's note goes, it's pretty compelling. They're desperate for a new GP here, and everyone is on the campaign trail.
And we got faith. Have you got time?
They've been struggling to recruit via traditional job ads, so Lostwithiel's 5,000-strong community, from butchers to firefighters, have made a film to recruit a new doctor to this special corner of Cornwall.
Lostwithiel is a fabulous community. We're looking for a new GP, so we got the whole of the town together and created a song and a pop video that we hope will attract fabulous and up for it doctors to come and serve our town.
Ain't got no home. The song is set to the tune of Nina Simone's Ain't Got No, I Got Life. Part of the recruitment drive highlights the town's beauty and history. It dates back to the 12th century and was once the Cornish capital.
How would you describe your interpersonal skills?
It's just 20 miles away from Port Isaac, the setting for Doc Martin, the TV series about a curmudgeonly GP who moves from London to Cornwall after the death of the local doctor. The current GP is retiring in 2 weeks' time, leaving just one remaining in a practice recently voted the best in the county.
If you come to a successful, well-established, cohesive, innovative practice in a beautiful place in the southwest like Lostwithiel, you won't leave.
Salary is up for discussion, but with a promise that they can negotiate terms if you keep us free from germs, it's surely an enticing prospect. Sharon Thomas, ITV News.
All right, a reminder of our main story this lunchtime. Nicola Sturgeon has made a shock announcement and resigned as First Minister of Scotland. She described the position as the privilege of her life, but she said that she knew the time was now for her to stand down, speaking of the relentless pressures of the job.
And the nature and form of modern political discourse means that there is a much greater intensity, dare I say it, brutality to life as a politician than in years gone by. Now, to be clear, I'm not expecting violins here, but I am a human being as well as a politician.
And there will be continuing coverage on ITVX of Nicola Sturgeon's shock resignation. The News Where You Are follows the national weather, but from everyone here on the Lunchtime team, bye-bye.